Yeah, listen to that. That was back when the code of ethics regarding the city council was going on, right? Is that when you guys went on?
Yep. It was shortly after that.
Didn't really feel like I got a whole lot out of that conversation. It was kind of just, this is going on and then it was over.
Yeah, it was really us. I mean, we were at the time, I think, more alarmed than we are now, recognizing how like entrenched the situation is and how accepted it is. How accepted the whole conflicts that we were finding. The city of Eureka has. Are we going? Are we
Yeah,
live?
we can go right now. Yeah, it's kind of just a rolling start, so it's
Sweet.
natural.
So yeah, I think at that point we recognized that there was several members of the Ink people in the city government, which within itself, especially on different committees, within itself were conflicts of interest, and having Leslie Castellano, the executive director of the Ink people up there, and her running around to get signatures, to get Katie Moulton, who's been with the Ink people for 17 years, getting her to run when the seat was open, which is a conflict, it's like, let me get my friend on the council also. And then G. Mario Fernandez, we found out that his organization, Humboldt Grassroots, is also under the Ink people as well, or they've been housed by the Ink people.
I mean, not just by the Ink people, but in Leslie Castellano's own personal venue, Synapsis. So.
Mm-hmm. The economic director of the city of Eureka, Swan Asbury, in 2018, she was the Ink people treasurer.
And Monica Topping as administrative director for the Ink people. And she's also a commissioner on is it Arts and Culture or Arts and Heritage Commission for the city? Yeah.
So we're just seeing all of these. Gary Bird, that's another one. Gary Bird was
a lot of connections.
A lot of
connections. Yeah, and so we're like, okay, is this the city of the Eureka or is this the Ink people's city?
How did all of this come onto your guys' radar? Because that's how I was first introduced to you both, was back when the code of ethics, the anarchism on the city council, all of that started surfacing. You guys seem to be kind of entrenched in that, speaking at city council meetings, vocalizing your opinions. Why?
So in October of
2022,
we were going for a basic beer and wine license. So we had a Forever Found. Humboldt was our business next to our dispensary, Heart of the Emerald, which are two separate entities, two separate businesses, two separate ownership structures. So, and we've always kept them separate, knowing the legalities of having a dispensary, which obviously that's an overregulated industry within itself. And knowing that we're under the microscope, we made sure that we did everything legal next door, which was a separate business. Of course, we were hoping that someday Arts and Culture and our venue would benefit one and the other would benefit the other. So we had kind of a plan in place for that, but always kept them separate. So we utilized Forever Found as a fundraiser also, or as a space to fundraise for different nonprofits.
Not a sort of venue for that.
Mm-hmm. And more of like a rental space, not like a venue that was open every day or a bar or whatever. So it really wasn't in our short-term plan to get a liquor license, because that wasn't, we weren't open every day. It didn't make sense for us to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars that we didn't have on a liquor license that is difficult to acquire in our city anyways. There's only a few that are out there. Pretty much someone has to go out of business in order to acquire a liquor license. And usually when that happens, they're hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we were open. We would rent the place out a lot to different promoters. For instance, we rented out to Rose Entertainment one Halloween, and they fundraised. The bar was a fundraiser for
Food for People.
Food for People. So there was several different organizations that we would fundraise for, or promoters themselves would come in and take the bar and they would fundraise for nonprofits, because we were just a rental space. So really the goal was to was to eventually crawl out of the COVID hole we were in. We were set back for a year and a half with no social gatherings. And so we were slowly but surely coming out of this COVID hole. And we were part of the Ink People's Dream Makers project. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So we were under the umbrella of the Ink People and actually raised quite a bit of funds for the Ink People and really wanted to utilize them more because we were arts and culture, they were arts and culture. But I mean, we didn't shy away from other nonprofits that we would raise money for. And usually that's, through the bar or through ticket sales or a percentage of the ticket sales. So, we were going for an event in October of 2022 for a haunted house we were doing. That was super cool. It was like a week-long haunted house, good community, kid-friendly event, obviously, And we reached out to the Ink People like we normally had in the past. We were just going for a beer and wine permit, which, we didn't want alcohol being served at
people getting crazy at a Halloween house.
Exactly. So we reached out to Leslie and nonprofits have unlimited beer and wine licenses to give to their affiliates. Not give to, but basically award. And Leslie signs off on all of them. She signed off on every single application that we previously had applied for. And of course, we'd give them their 15% because that's what they do with Dream Makers is the Ink People get 15% cut off of any Dream Makers activity. And the Ink People will either help facilitate grants or help facilitate beer and wine permits, dailies, or liquor licenses, dailies. So the Ink People make 15% off their Dream Makers in general, and there's over 100 Dream Makers. Which is, for us, that seemed like a really, really awesome program because, if you're a supporter of the arts, if you're an artist yourself, which, artists tend to be introverted and don't necessarily always want to market themselves or know the business angle of things. So it really
are usually struggling financially. So a little extra help is beneficial.
Absolutely. And grants, of course, like if the Ink People could help you as an artist get a grant to do a mural, they're going to get 15% of that grant. So it benefits them, but it also benefits the starving artist and the artist who's not necessarily used to marketing themselves, which is kind of typical. And so we thought it was great because, it really helps artists stay doing art as opposed to other things that they may or may not know how to do. So, and it also includes business owners. If you're a supporter of the arts and you're a business that supports the arts, you also can fall under their umbrella. So we were going for one of the permits that they have unlimited amounts for. And I heard, Thomas was on here not too long ago, and we have to obviously fact check some of the things that he doesn't know about. And he tends to, spew off things without really researching them, which is very important for us to know that we are factual. We're not conspiracy theorists. A conspiracy theory is only a theory until there's factual data, and then it becomes a conspiracy fact.
And how many of those have turned out to be facts over time? That branding is so tough to get out of once you're under the umbrella of, oh, this is just a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Once they can brand you with that, it sticks and spreads like wildfire.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the divisive tactic, I guess you could say, to make sure that if people are considered a conspiracy theorist because it goes against a group or a person, and if facts come out to prove that conspiracy theory was actually factual, well, they've already done their work making sure you're grouped into a certain demographic, and then they can try to somehow convince people that you're a wacko, So, but like I said, Jess and I are fact-driven individuals, so we just follow the facts, like any and like any investigative scenario or any person who is done wrong and wants to get to the bottom of why they've been done wrong. So we were going for a permit. It was a beer and wine permit, which the Ink people have unlimited amounts of beer and wine, just like, all nonprofits do. It's the liquor licenses that you're, now we know this because we found out after the fact that we were told by the Ink people, by Leslie herself. In fact, we even...
by Monica, but Leslie was copied on the email where they made it clear that each dream maker had 12 liquor licenses, hard alcohol licenses allotted to them per calendar year.
And you have that email.
Yeah, I have that email. We wanted to give it to you because we kind of wanted to clear up some misinformation that's, being put out there and, from your prior guest.
Well, that's what I had heard. I mean, kind of digging into the background prior to bringing you guys on was the point of contention around the dream makers only can allot, I think it was 12 liquor licenses, and that you guys had been allotted 10 or 11 of those 12, and that, it almost seems like you guys are rigging the system by using all of these liquor licenses without actually doing anything outside of that. You're just gaming the system. Let's get another license.
They told us we had 12, and we were crawling out of our COVID hole trying to generate some funds.
To you, actually.
So if you read that, you can highlight it.
And the Ink people ended up finding out later down the road that they were incorrect. And once that happened, we stopped applying for hard alcohol licenses through them entirely.
Because we had other nonprofits we could generate funds for and fundraise for. So if you want to read that, I think it's important to make sure that Thomas hears it so he understands, and everybody else.
But for this situation in particular with the haunted house, you guys weren't applying for necessarily a liquor license. It was a beer and wine license.
That's correct.
And that's the one that you guys were rejected on.
Correct.
And we'll get to that, but I think you should read that so that the audience knows.
And maybe while you read that, we could talk about some of the other incorrect things that Thomas stated.
Well, maybe let him read the email from Monica saying that we have 12.
Okay.
So this is from Monica topping to you, Jess.
Yes.
Okay. Morning, Jess. I'm awaiting word back from Brian at the ABC about the quantity of full bar permits y'all have gotten this calendar year so far. An organization is limited to 12 per year, and thankfully the ABC understands that the Ink people, as an organization, has 100 plus projects as part of us and counts all of the projects separately. That said, I think there's a good chance y'all are running up against your allotted 12. I sent him an email last week to double check, but I think it was after his office hours for the week had wrapped up. I'm hoping to hear back tomorrow or Wednesday, then I'll let you know. Okay.
Allotted 12.
Yeah. I mean, they basically told us the wrong information, and we went, again, trying to generate funds after being closed for a whole year.
Well, I think that's an important part is you guys are trying to crawl out from COVID, so it would be understandable that you guys are trying to put on as many events as possible to make up for lost time. I think anybody in that situation would be doing. I'd be trying to do one a weekend.
And honestly, we also thought, we were raising money for the Ink people. We raised thousands of dollars for
with
the
that
Ink people.
15% off the top.
And
with the 15%.
I mean, another point to make: Roy and I never made a paycheck from Forever Found. Not one. All of our time there was, put in for free in hopes that someday we could build the dream of having this venue that brings some much needed arts and culture to the downtown Eureka area that's kind of sorely lacking entertainment. So, I mean, this was years put in for free. Roy invested a couple $100,000 in stocks from a company that he was a part of as well, which we'll never see the return for. But yeah, it was definitely something. It was a labor of love.
Yeah. And community. It was great to bring the community together. I'd been part of the community almost my whole life, and to do events for all demographics of people. For the youth, we were hosting ping pong tournaments and
poetry, and we donated the space to other dream makers to have their poetry event. We've had fashion shows there. It was very diverse. That was the goal.
And I think ultimately, now that we know what we know about the situation, Leslie Castellano has a venue also she was trying to crawl out of her own COVID hole, with Synapsis. And
coincidentally was also applying for a beer and wine permit in that same email sent to the police chief for Halloween for herself.
And again, the beer and wine is unlimited in terms of permits.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument to deny you guys the beer and wine was that they only have 12 alcohol and beverage control permits.
That's the information that's being spread, but
yeah, I mean, and really what it boiled down to is Leslie sent an email that we had to get from a PRA, from a Public Request Act, and the email she had, all the emails we received through PRAs showed that there was previous discussions and things being discussed with EPD about our business, and Leslie, was saying she's wearing her Ink People hat when she's talking to the police about me. And, she's got that hat on, which, ethically, you're not allowed to wear two hats when you're a city council member, especially a city council member who also has a venue similar to ours, Arts and Culture. And so we were requesting, we called Leslie and said, hey, we're having a haunted house, and it's only for beer and wine. So we understand we're at 11 right now with our liquor permits and our allowance. So this shouldn't make much of a difference. And through the emails received through the PRA requests, we saw that she first mentioned to Brian that she's having an event for Halloween, and that, there's going to be dancing and all of this, and at Synapsis. And, oh, by the way, Roy Gomez from Forever Found is also having an event on Halloween, and he's asking for a daily beer and wine for their event. And is there something you want me to talk to him about? Like, she specifically asked Brian if there's something Brian Stevens, the assistant chief at the time. And that was the email. It's like, do you have anything you want me to talk to him about?
Was that the start of the communication between them? Were there prior emails before that?
There was a lot of prior emails about it, about like our venue. And, there was an instance where, I mean, it wasn't even a fight. It was something happened outside of the venue, and EPD contacted the Ink People about it. I have the email actually right here.
But they didn't even know if that was a patron of the venue. So, I mean, things happen in downtown Eureka. I think we all...
Yeah, it's not necessarily the safest environment down there.
Right.
So this is going on, and at the time, after you guys are rejected, you think, what? Okay, maybe we've hit our allotment. And did you know about the distinction between hard liquor? You knew it at the time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So basically, after that email, she sent asking if Brian had anything to talk to us about. He shot off an email and said, here's your permit, have a great event. And in regards to Forever Found, I will no longer be approving any ABC licenses at that space. And he gave these reasons about something happening, let's see, that had to do with ABC and temporary licenses endangering the nonprofits that are being used. So we're like, whoa, we've never been cited for anything. We've never been ticketed. We've never even had a fight in our venue. Like, what is going on here? Like, there's nothing to back what Brian's saying up. And there's definitely, so we didn't know at the time until we got the other emails, the PRA, with the PRA request, we received a bunch of other emails where Leslie, not a bunch, a couple, where it was pretty indicative that Leslie was trying to sabotage us, and, from that point on, we were like, whoa, this is not normal. It's not normal for someone who you've supported over the years. In fact, we hosted an event for Leslie's, for her campaign, And this was it, actually. It was Lagos Roots, and you could see Leslie Castellano this was in 2019, right when we acquired the space to do Forever Found, before we even had a dispensary open. So you see the Ink people with Leslie Castellano, and we were hosting this event for her to help her generate some funds for her campaign, which we later found out was not legal for a nonprofit to be affiliated with a campaign. And Leslie at the time was the vice president of the Ink people. So there's not just an affiliation, there's a nonprofit actually. And that's I didn't realize it until all of this happened, that's actually illegal. You can't be a nonprofit, and that actually is part of trying to get
candidate elected.
Mm-hmm. So it was just a real a real shot to us. Like, how could somebody who we've supported over the years, and someone who, someone who we've helped, generate funds to get into office and offered our space up for free and, advocated for her to get elected. Like, how could she just completely throw us under a bus that didn't exist? And the reason why I say a bus that didn't exist was because when I asked her for the email from Brian, I wanted to see the email, she refused to send it to us. And I'm like, you're a public official. You are supposed to send us what we ask you. And of course, at that time, I didn't know there was a whole PRA process in order to acquire certain emails and whatnot. But I mean, I'm asking her directly, can you just forward the email to Brian so I can address some of his concerns? Because we've never been ticketed. We've never had a fight in our venue. And her response to me was, I know there are strict requirements about having a cannabis business and how that prohibits the sale of alcohol. I don't want the nonprofit that we are fiscal sponsor of to be a way of getting around that regulation. I mean, she sent that in an email with the police department involved, basically backing up what Brian said, instead of backing us up, which she's our constituent at that point. Oh, excuse me, our business is a constituent of hers. We're supporter of her. Like, ethically, as a representative of the people, you are supposed to represent the interest of the people before your own personal interests. So to me, like, that was unbelievable. Like, that she put this in an email accusing us of basically something that didn't exist. Like, she says there are strict requirements about having a cannabis business and how that prohibits the sale of alcohol. Which, like I said earlier, we've been under a microscope as a cannabis business, like all cannabis businesses, going from the gray market to the white market. We knew the legalities of what we were doing. And we knew she was wrong. She was completely wrong.
I mean, we never had an event at Forever Found that had cannabis and alcohol. That's an entirely separate type of permit that's pretty expensive, and one that we had never acquired or applied for.
Is there any gray area where you guys are affiliated with both organizations, though, that there could be some backlash that could fall on the Ink people, where you do own a cannabis business and now you are applying for these liquor licenses on the side?
I mean, they're both legal businesses, and we're operating them in accordance with the law. So I would be confused about a gray area. A lot of people own multiple businesses that do entirely different things.
So the distinction under that clause is that you can't sell alcohol out of your cannabis business.
Absolutely.
So if you guys were
not.
with Forever Found and trying to apply for these liquor licenses,
Yes.
that would be the issue.
Correct.
But you have two separate entities.
Mm-hmm.
One is doing these events and applying for these licenses. The other is the cannabis business.
Exactly. And really, like, the separation of the two is required. Like, we would never let anybody walk in through our cannabis business and then go to, like, we were very, very strict on making sure that they were separate. I mean, in fact, when shows would start, usually it was around 9 or 10, people start to show up. We were closed. Like, so a lot of the times when we were having events at Forever Found, the cannabis business was closed. So there really was no intermingling at all. And, after that, after she sent that in that email where she basically was completely false and wrong about it, I sent her an email on the side. I'm like, Leslie, what are you talking about? Like, there's no, you're wrong. There is no law that prohibits a cannabis business owner from having another venue next door, or prohibits us from selling alcohol in general, which is what she was saying. And so basically she wrote an email back to me after I pointed that out to her. And she basically apologized. She said, I did a bunch of research today and I realized now that I was wrong, that there are capabilities of you having a cannabis business and still apply for permits for alcohol. Sorry about that. And this was like after EPD had already, this was after the fact. The damage had been done. So we really didn't. And we have all this documented. It's in our claim. Anybody can go in there. I have the claim in front of me, so I'm looking down at some of the quotes to try to get you the exact words she said. But really, I mean, that's the gist of it. Like, the gist of it is that she understood that she was wrong. She apologized after the fact, but the damage had been done at that point, and we were told that we wouldn't be able to no longer apply for any permits at all. And this was before we knew all the backdoor stuff she was talking with Brian about. And, those are all, it's all in the claim. We've been really transparent about this, which is why it surprises me that Thomas gets I mean,
we were following the rules that were laid out by the Ink people to us to a T. I mean, the whole source of the fundraising that we did for them was through the bar sales. And that was always how it was. That's how it was planned out. And we abided by that. Sometimes we would donate even more if we had a successful show. So yeah, it was a shock.
You guys were pretty blindsided by this.
Absolutely.
Did you reach out to Brian Stevens at the time and say, hey, we know there's some contention with our beer and wine license. Is there any way we can resolve this? Is there something we need to be aware of that we need to change?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I can read you the email. Do you mind?
Oh, no.
Is that cool? Okay.
Yeah, for people just listening, you guys have a lot of documents out in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's partly where our transparency. And
well, that's good. Yeah.
They're all online too. Like we posted everything just so people realize, like, we're trying to be transparent here. And what was going on behind the scenes wasn't transparency or representative of the people. When you're a representative and you're in a representative position, you are ethically responsible to advocate and support the people's interest before your own interest, which, obviously was circumvented in this case. So this was the email that I wrote after finding out. It's, good morning, Leslie. As your constituent, community member, campaign supporter, and Ink People member, I'm formally again requesting for the fourth time that you forward me the email sent to you from Captain Stevens that you referenced on 11/21 and read to my partner, Jessica Frint, regarding Transcending Jaguar, which was the name, our name that Dreammaker name. Yeah. So without the requested email and your related concerns cannot be properly considered or addressed without that email. So yeah, basically we were trying to get to the bottom of this from day one. And part of that was, let's put a meeting together with Todd Jarvis, who was the chief at the time, Brian Stevens. Let's discuss what's going on, because this is our livelihood, our investment, everything we've worked for, everything we kept alive. Very difficult to keep it alive over COVID, a whole year of absolutely nothing going on on that side of our of the building, which was a separate entity. So we were trying to do all that, and it didn't go anywhere. We had to start requesting. We had to go through the channels. That's after we requested on 4 different occasions, which we have documented, the email from from Brian, to try to get down to the bottom of what his concerns were, because we weren't sure at the time. We were like, did something happen outside that we don't know about? Was there some sort of ticket or some sort of undercover agent or something that came in and saw we were doing something wrong? We just didn't know. And we still don't know, because after getting all the docs and the PRA requests, there was nothing there. There was no complaints to ABC. There was nothing other than Leslie having communications, wearing her Ink People hat, which also is something you can't do as a representative. You are 24/7. You're a representative of the people, not someone who could take your hat off and say, "Oh, I'm talking to you," which we have an email where she says that, "Oh, I'm talking to you with my Ink People executive director hat on." It's like, you can't do that. Like, you are not 2 people. You're a representative of the people. And that's the commitment you take on when you're tasked and when you're voted in. When you're voted in, you represent the people before yourself. And that's, part of where, the ethics code comes in and certain things around that issue, which I'm sure we'll get to.
So what did Brian Stevens say to you guys when he denied the license? Did he give an explanation?
Yeah, I think I just read it, but I'll read it again. No problem.
That where you're requesting the email for the 4th time, that was to Brian Stevens.
It was to the group. It was Brian Stevens, Leslie. I mean, at that point, I just started CCing everybody who
was involved.
Who was involved? Yeah, Todd Jarvis. I think at that point, I also had Miles and even Swan. I think I had a few different people on there that I knew of at the city. And really, there really was no response from them. The only response that I got was from Leslie, but in a side email saying, "Oh, sorry, I was wrong," which at that point there was already
chain of events going on.
Exactly.
But when you're denied, there was no even from Leslie. She didn't say you guys are denied because of X, Y, and Z. It was just you guys. Your application has not been accepted.
Well, we were denied specifically because she told Stevens, from her understanding, that as a cannabis permit holder, we weren't allowed to apply for alcohol permits.
But you guys didn't know this at the time. That came out in the emails, right?
Yeah, we didn't know that at the time.
So what was given to you guys as a reason why? I would assume Leslie reached out and said, "Hey, you guys aren't getting this license."
You had a conversation with her.
She called me, and she kind of pinned it on the assistant chief at the time and said that it was, God, what were the words she used? That it would reflect poorly upon the Ink People if they continued to work with us. And that was what she had heard from the assistant chief at the time.
And how long had you guys been working together prior to this?
I mean, Roy was working with her, but before I was, maybe 3 years.
But for the events specifically, how long were those in place? Was that pre-COVID? You guys were doing a lot of that?
So pre-COVID, we had just, in 2019, we acquired that space and established Forever Found as an entity. And one of the first things we did was a big event out in Blue Lake at Perigo Park called the Funk and Reggae Festival. We brought in Michael Franti. It was a 2-day event. It was a great event, great family event. And the bars, the several different beer and wine bars that we had there, I think we might have even had a liquor license for that one. But the Ink People made 15% of that, which was a big take because we had over 3,500 people come to the event at Perigo Park. So that was the beginning of our relationship with Ink People in 2019. I mean, honestly, the first event we did with the Ink People was this campaign event for Leslie Castellano, which the Ink People were part of that. So that was actually one of the first events we did at the actual establishment. But from there, we did the festival at Parago Park also. And
didn't you have a retirement party for
we
Libby as
hosted,
well, Maynard?
We hosted the 40th anniversary for the Ink people there also, which was another time that we just gave the space up to the Ink people for free so that they could host. It was a great event. It was a 40 years anniversary of the Ink people, and there was several people from the community, law enforcement, the city, and there was a lot of people there that were, and it was a big fundraiser for the Ink people also. So I don't know how much they took in funds at the event, but I know that there was packed, and there was food being sold, and the bar was packed too. So
my point of confusion in all of this is that for beer and wine, we've already said that there is no limit to the licenses, and you're both applying. You and Leslie are both applying for beer and wine. So it seems interesting that this would be the point where you guys kind of get hit over the head. I could see if you guys were applying for a hard liquor license and you already have your 11 and they're like, hey, we have 100 different organizations under us. We need to spread out these permits so other people can have their events. You guys are taking a lot of them, so we're going to deny you for that. But the beer and wine, where there is no upper limit, it seems weird that would be a point of contention.
It seemed weird to us
yeah,
too.
That was our thoughts also. Yeah, I mean, it was... like I said, the only thing we can assume, is, especially with the email that she wrote to Brian, which was essentially, I'm having an event. That's how it started. Synapsis. Here's the application for Synapsis for our Halloween event. And by the way, Roy and Forever Found are wanting to apply for a beer and wine permit also. And do you have anything you'd like for me to talk to them about? And
these events were on the same night?
One, I think hers was a 2-day event. Ours was a 5-day haunted house. So yeah, they were around Halloween. So it would have been it's certainly the optics of a conflict were there. And when dealing with anything ethical or ethical expectations of representatives, there just needs to be an appearance of a conflict. It doesn't necessarily need to be even concrete. If there's an appearance of a conflict, you have to recuse yourself, which there was already conversations happening where she thought that she could wear one hat over the other, and that's not how it works. If you are a venue owner and we're a venue owner, and you're applying for a beer and wine license for your Halloween event, and we're applying for a beer and wine license for our event for Halloween, there's an appearance of a conflict there, so you have to recuse yourself. And the best thing she could have done would have been, Roy, I'm conflicted here because I'm having an event also. You may have to utilize another nonprofit, which wouldn't have been difficult for us. We would have gone to whoever else, there's several nonprofits out there that we could have been raising funds for, which we had already been doing that because we realized we were up against our 11th one already. We only had one more for liquor, but this wasn't even a liquor one, which is why we went to the Ink people, was because they're like, oh, let's raise some money for them,
Yeah, the appearance of conflicts is always kind of tricky. If you were going to come at it from her side, do you believe that it was the appearance of a conflict, or do you think she was actually worried about the aspect of serving alcohol and also having a cannabis business adjacent, and she was worried that somehow, rightly or wrongly, might blow back on the Ink people? Or do you think that was just not viable, that she was just looking for something?
I think to her defense, if I was in a position to defend her, I would say she was really ignorant to what ethical codes actually are about as a representative. And we'll get into that also because the ethics code hadn't been provided to any of the incoming council members since 2018. So she really didn't understand what it meant to be a representative of the people. And so that would be where I would say she she would be in, I would understand, is that she just didn't realize the obligation that she has to the people and the ethical obligation. So because it hadn't been provided to her, the ethics code 2018-25 was written in 2017 and enacted as a resolution. And there was a couple of council members, one being Frank Yeager, the old mayor, who didn't like some of the language of it. And he decided to take his signature off of it, which he was already outgoing, he wasn't, and one other member of the council, excuse me, thought that it was too broad in that it didn't allow for endorsements, which they felt was a violation of their freedom of speech. So there was two members that after it had passed, per se, there's always going to be dissenters on certain things, and these two people dissented. So from that point on, in 2018, there was an ethics code in place as a resolution, but for whatever reason, Pam Powell took the blame for this, and she basically buried it. She decided to not show it to any of the incoming council members or any of the elected or appointed officials, because the ethics code is supposed to be broad enough to represent the behavior and certain guidance for elected and appointed officials, which Brian was in that also. He was also involved in something that he could have, if he had the ethics code in front of him, he could have realized that this is not right. Leslie, you're a venue owner. Roy's a venue owner. We probably shouldn't be talking about Roy right now, or Forever Found. So really what happened is that she was ignorant to the roles and responsibilities that she has as an elected or appointed official, because the code of ethics was buried.
And all of this culminates with a lawsuit being brought against the city.
Not a lawsuit, but a claim. Like, we didn't further, like, you have to make a claim first, which the city, honestly, let's back that up. We wrote a letter to the mayor because per the ethics code, and I brought the letter, I'm going to read it to you. Dear Miss Kimbergell, this is from my attorney. I've been retained by Forever Found Productions with regards to an action and statements made by city staff and city council member Leslie Castellano, which have directly caused significant damage to my client's business and are a violation of the city's code of ethics and conduct for elected and appointed officials. I am directing this correspondence directly to you as mayor per the code of ethics, as the violation involves a city of Eureka council member. And this is quote unquote pulled from the ethics code. It is the responsibility of the mayor to initiate action if a council member's behavior may warrant sanction. If no action is taken by the mayor, the alleged violation can be brought up with the full council in a public meeting. So that's language, that's the teeth of the ethics code that was already in place as a resolution, and not an ordinance per se. So that's where the disconnect is Pam felt that, oh, well, this is just a resolution. We're just not going to show it to anybody else. So as a citizen, I looked up, as soon as we were going through these ethical scenarios and these violations against us, I looked up City of Eureka ethics code, and I found one. So I started to pull language from it and started to enter it into some of the emails that I had going with Leslie and the city. And, it's like, well, where is the accountability? Because it says right here that if there's an appearance of a conflict, that it needs to be handled. And there's some, there's teeth to the ethics code, which is the difference between, one of the differences between the rescinded ethics code that I was quoting to where the handbook is now. So really what this was saying is, hey, Mayor, it's pretty apparent. Either you can sanction or censure, excuse me, the council member who's in violation, or the topic could be brought up to the full council, and the council will decide whether there's anything there, or whether, and the likelihood of them saying no would be there, but at least the public would know that there is accountability and transparency, and accountability is important because accountability breeds transparency. If public officials recognize that they're going to be held accountable for something, the likelihood of them recusing themselves, or the likelihood of them, doing things more ethically would be more likely, when they know they'll be held accountable. So accountability is very important. So this is the difference, is that there was a method of accountability in the rescinded ethics code. So having that letter, it started off as a letter, just a simple letter to the mayor, no lawsuit, no nothing, no claim. And we were ignored. Like, we had no actual response. I mean, she didn't even respond that she received it. And Miles Slattery was also in the CC as well. This is my attorney letting them know that there's a process, there's an ethics code, and there was some violations, and there's guidance, there's a code that we're asking you to use. We got zero response. So, I mean, it kind of made us realize, okay, well, something's happening here. We might have to make a claim, which is the next step. And the claim can be denied or accepted by the city. Usually 90% of them are denied, as the city defaults to a law firm that their insurance chooses. And that law firm usually decides whether or not there's anything there. And usually they know that most citizens don't have the money to further it into a lawsuit from a claim. So they really do take advantage of that in that sense. So they pretty much deny anybody if someone trips and falls because of one of these bulb outs, which is happening left and right, they make a claim to the city, but we all know how much it takes to litigate further, and they kind of bank on that and hope that people don't. And maybe they hope they do, regardless, it's very difficult to go from the claim to the litigation lawsuit that you mentioned.
So you bring forth the claim. Have you heard back from the city?
Yep. They denied it. They denied that there was anything there. There was, and they keep it at that because, and it wasn't quite the city because, again, they farm it out,
Outside counsel.
Outside counsel, yeah.
So what does that mean for you guys? Are you prepared to take this to the next level? Are you weighing your options?
I'm running for 3rd District Supervisor to bring attention to this, because what we started to do is we started to realize, okay, it's going to be up to us to investigate the situation and understand why. Like, we went on a quest, basically, like after we were denied, we're like, well, why would the city and the elected and appointed officials behave in this manner? What would make them behave so unethically? And we ran into Pandora's box of unethical activity. And we started to recognize, whoa, okay, well, there's a lot of appearances of conflicts of interest here, being that Leslie's executive director of the Ink People, she ran around and got signatures when there was no seat, no one running for Katie Moulton during COVID, which it was, people didn't want to run for office during COVID, when we were all in our COVID holes wondering if the world was going to end, so, and then Mario was the other one. We're like, whoa, we found some really unethical activity with Mario being an anarchist and being an admitted, or not admitted at the time. But we started to see all these connections, and the Ink People were just all in the city now. Like, the Ink People there were several different people in city positions that within itself, I mean,
Well, we started wondering, what it was that we did wrong as a dream maker to be treated that way. And so I started looking through the website and just kind of getting a handle on, all the different dream makers. And there are hundreds of them, trying to dissect them, see what they're doing to raise money for the Ink people. And that's when we came upon Humboldt Grassroots and the Rhizome Info Shop. And we discovered that they're a dream maker, which I know you're familiar with Humboldt Grassroots. I don't know if everybody watching is, but they're an anarchist organization and publication, and one that specifically promotes and endorses very violent behaviors. I mean, I'm sure this is a familiar image at this point, really abolish the police, liberation in our time, this burning police building, which we weren't intending to bring this paper in, but it happened to be sitting in the back of our car.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in the car with Naya.
My daughter. This is funny.
She's 7 years
Not
old.
funny. It's actually
And
telling.
we didn't know it was in the back. And she looks at it and she was just like, oh my goodness, what is this? And so I tell her what it says. And she was just like, well, I don't like that at all. These are bad people, and
Like, that's from my innocent daughter who sees that image. I mean, and
this is somebody who's sitting as a public official. And not only as a public official, but he's also the chair of the Humboldt County Democrats. And this is not democratic behavior.
well, I think more importantly was we were scouring, trying to figure out whether he admitted to this while he was running for office. And we couldn't find anywhere where anybody, not even John Fullerton, who he was running against, he beat John Fullerton by 4%. And we're like, did John attack him on this? Or did John say anything that he was affiliated with this group? Because I would have. I mean,
yeah.
it's alarming. It was alarming to us. Like, this is our community. And
now that's 3 people.
4 with Swan and
3
Monica
people that have a vote.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
On
Majority
the city
vote.
council. A majority vote. And I mean, in any council or board, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be, people way over on this side, people way over on that side, but it all usually kind of, the pendulum usually balances out somewhere. But it was alarming to see that that's the majority vote. So we tried to get a hold of Miles Slattery, the city manager. And I was actually able to get a hold of him on the phone, and I let him know our concerns, and he said that he had worked with them, them being Leslie and Katie and Mario, every day for the past 6 months, and he knew for a fact that none of them were anarchists or had affiliations with anarchy, and proceeded. Then Roy joined the phone call, and he proceeded to tell us that we were flat earthers, conspiracy theorists, that we needed to seek counseling.
I've known Miles for like 18 years. We went to CR together, and like our kids played on the same AAU team. He knows me as a business owner, and he knows I've never gone to council to complain or anything. And the fact that we were doing this, like, that was like, whoa. I mean, Miles, how long have you known me? I'm not a conspiracy theorist or somebody off the street, some carpetbagger who's just like coming into town trying to spread rumors about people. But we have discovered that there are anarchists and people that want to dismantle capitalism and hosting symposiums that are advocating for dismantling capitalism and all kinds of different anarchist ideas and thoughts. And you're going to call me a flat earther and you're going to call me a conspiracy theorist, bud? Come on. So the next day, Mario was having a town hall at Jefferson School. And Miles just lit a fire under my ass. Like, I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to be like that and call us names, I'm gonna go to this. I'm gonna get him on record. He's a public official. He better be ready to answer questions in regards to this topic, because he didn't disclose to his constituents that he was an anarchist, and that he's not just an anarchist, he's an organizer for an anarchist group that promotes violence online, that promotes blowing up police departments, abolishing police departments, not defund. Like, this is his post, Humboldt Grassroots. Like, I'm going to get him on record. And since the media hasn't done their investigative journalism while he was running to give a real informed decision to his constituents, because that's also a failure in our society, in our community, is that the media refused or didn't, at that time, they just hadn't done the homework or hadn't gone and got him on record. So we go to Jefferson, to the town hall, which was about a planning.
It's for Dr. Stokes, basically. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the topic of safety comes up. And I asked Dr. Stokes, I'm like, well, Dr. Stokes, do you think that Mario here, and Miles is right next to Mario, and this was after he called us flat earthers and said they're not anarchists. Miles is right next to Mario. And I asked Dr. Stokes, I'm like, do you feel that that Mario is his concern is really with safety in our community, and that that's his real agenda, his real personal agenda? And Dr. Stokes says, yeah, it should be, and everybody's. And then I look at Mario and I'm like, are you an anarchist? And he says, well, 53% of the vote thought that I should be up here making decisions. I'm like, that's not what I asked you. Are you an anarchist? And he says, well, anarchy as you think or anarchy as I think. And I was like, you can sugarcoat the word, just like Thomas was trying to do on your show the other day. You can sugarcoat it, but come on, you can't sugarcoat it. My 7-year-old daughter thinks that this is not right. So he comes up with all the reasons in the world why, I'm like, well, will you denounce anarchy? He's like, no. And I'm like, why do you think that it should be advocated in our community? And we have this all on record. It was at a public meeting. We've posted the video. You may have seen it.
I've seen the video.
Yeah. So it's just, wow. And then I say, so you are an author and organizer for Humble Grassroots, are you not? He says, I am in present time. Not like I was before I got elected. It's I am. And it's like, and did you tell your constituents? And he said, no. I'm like, why not? It's like, nobody asked me. I'm like, nobody asked you. Is that democracy? Is that giving your constituents an informed decision on voting for you? Because you beat Fullerton by 4%. Maybe if you would have disclosed to the public that you're into this kind of anarchy and you're into anarchy in general, because there's no sugarcoating the word. Anarchy is the breakdown of structure in society. It's chaos. It's not recognizing the value of structure and the rule of law and the state. So what are you doing in government if you're an organizer for a violent anarchist group? The only thing that I can think of is to dismantle it from within and all your other associates.
Well, that's kind of the whole basis of the Rhizome Info Shop. Yeah. I don't know if you're...
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that one.
Tell them.
So, a rhizome in its basic definition is, the root system of plants that grow underground, and shoots come up above the surface that appear separate but are connected underground. So that's kind of the methodology behind the Rhizome Info Shop as far as how Humboldt Grassroots works with that. And it's to teach people in their community how to systematically infiltrate their, local governments, whether that's councils, boards, school boards, water boards, anywhere within their community. But that's the goal of that group, is to teach people how to do that.
And that group was a dream maker in the Inc. Annex. So they were right in the Inc. People's facility.
Which is, it's so confusing, because when you look at the definition of what it is to be a dream maker, it's about arts and culture.
Where's the arts and culture in this? Is this?
It's listed on their website that you can apply to become a dream maker if your idea fits our mission. We may invite you to join the Inc. People family. They'll help you with every aspect of running a successful arts and culture project.
Humboldt Grassroots is not arts and culture. And Mario being an organizer of that group is troubling, like it's one thing if you're just a person off the streets who believes in this and is organizing this, but once you're in government and you haven't been transparent about that activity, and then all of a sudden no one's willing to hold you accountable, like that's troubling. Because as soon as we got him on record, we went to the media. We went to Time Standards, Ruth and Sage at the Time Standards, Jenny at Redwood Coast News. We went to Hank at Las Cosas Outpost, who our kids play basketball together also.
No one will touch it.
Kim Kemp. We're like, you don't even need to say anything about me. This should be front page paper. Council member admits to being violent anarchist.
Well, and chair of Humboldt County Democrats.
And chair of the Humboldt County Democrats. Progressive. I mean, this is partly one of the reasons why I'm an independent now, is I want nothing. If that's progressive, which I've always thought I was progressive. I'm in cannabis. I've been a cannabis from gray to black to white now, or the other way around. It's like I've been progressive within the laws, and I want to consider myself as a progressive. But if that's progressive and progressives believe in anarchy, that's digressive. Excuse me. That's digressive, in my opinion.
Well, in Mario's defense, I don't know necessarily that he was trying to hide it. I think there's a stronger claim for omission. I mean, I had him on my podcast prior to him being elected, and I don't think we discussed his ties to Humboldt grassroots, but we did discuss his ties to anarchism and his belief around that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, I don't want to put words in his mouth, I want to say he was somehow affiliated with the Dismantling Capitalism Symposium that they do.
Yep.
And we talked about that. So I don't know that he was hiding it. I think there is a claim that, it never came up in a more public forum or by the media or by anyone asking really detailed questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could say, well, is omission the same as lying? I don't know.
In government and when you're running for office, it's lying when you keep it from the people.
Yeah, but then what politician should be in office? I mean,
certainly not ones that want to blow police departments up.
Yeah, but that's more a claim against the system than any individual. I don't think there's any politician, maybe in history, that has not omitted certain parts of their past or their current present. I mean, that's kind of politics in a nutshell. Nobody's coming out saying, hey, these are my scars. I'm going to show them to the world so that they can accurately make a judgment on if they want me to lead them or not.
And this is where the importance of free press comes in. This is where it's very important for the media to get to the bottom of who this candidate is and what he represents and make sure that the voters are informed, making an informed decision when they go to vote.
Are you guys familiar with George Santos?
Yeah.
That's a prime example.
Absolutely.
But that's a prime example of a politician outright lying.
Well, but the example there that we should all take now is that he just got outed by his own colleagues. He just was told by his own colleagues that, no, this is not right. So when you see other politicians holding him accountable, the next guy might think twice about whether or not he should disclose something as important as ripping people off the way George Santos did.
Yeah, but even Menendez is still in office. And that guy was taking bribes. He's getting paid off by gold bars.
But would you have known that had the media not been on him?
We didn't know that.
But we do now.
Yeah, we do now.
And why? Because
I don't think it's...
Because the media.
Is it the media or is it fringe people who are doing digging? I would say it's outside sources.
It's
independent
investigative
media.
Journalism. Investigative journalism is should never be biased one way or another, in my opinion. Even though obviously there's Fox News and there's CNN, but we're on a local level here, and anarchy and destruction and blowing police departments up is a little bit different than what George Santos did.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
not to excuse what the lies and stuff.
But some of Mario's ideas, even around anarchism, are more accepted on the left. The idea of reallocating funds from the police.
Well, then why hide it? Then why not tell people? If it's so accepted, why did you not disclose it? And he admitted that he did not disclose it to his constituents because nobody asked him. So if you're so confident in your agenda and thinking a majority of people might want to blow police departments up, or thinking that a majority of people want to dismantle capitalism, which what does that say for businesses who depend on that? What does that say for free thought and competition, which breeds innovation the way capitalism does? And we'll get to what I feel about David Cobb and the one who runs the whole puppeteering of this whole scenario. But it's time to go on record, and it's time for the media to accept that this is a reality, and we need to decide whether we want our children to look at our leaders and think that this is okay, that it's okay to be a leader in a community if you're going to advocate for violence, if you're going to advocate for rioting. Is this what we want our children to grow up thinking is okay? And that's part of our motivation. My motivation, I say ours because I wouldn't do it without my wife being okay with it, but we're running for office now, not only for this reason, for a lot of different reasons, but definitely to also bring attention to where the media failed the public.
In terms of accountability, so going back to your claim against the city, this is in response to that in some regard, you being denied. So your solution to that is to bring accountability by running and being on the board of supervisors.
No. Really, the claim we've decided to not further because we didn't turn it into a lawsuit for every reason why. I mean, you're up against the city who has all the money in the world, and we don't. And really, the claim, and that is now at this point a separate issue to us because this just opened our eyes. It opened our eyes to the fact that there's this type of unethical activity happening in our government, in our local government. And it led to other issues. It led to, us paying attention to politics in general, which kind of really fast forwarded the situation to where we're at now, where we're running for office, which, so many people out there were like, oh, well, if you're going to complain about the city and complain about this and that, why don't you just run? So I did.
But if you're looking for a real sense of accountability, they always say hit them in their pocketbook because that's where you get the most effective change. If you had a strong argument in your claim, obviously I don't know your guys' finances, and I would imagine going up against the city is going to take a lot of money. But if you have a valid claim and you really want to express that to people, because it seems like people are kind of on the edge of whether you guys are just making something out of nothing or if there's some valid information there, wouldn't a great avenue be to continue that and turn it into a lawsuit?
It takes a lot of money, as you said.
That's the biggest hang up.
That's the biggest hang up. But what we recognize more importantly, which this is the court of public opinion. The court of public opinion generates thoughts and transparency, and the court of public opinion will be where we're going to fight this, and make sure that people understand that their media has failed them and has allowed for this infiltration of violent anarchists that promote violence and advocate for it. And just take a look around us. We have increased homelessness. We have car wrecks from all of these different traffic things. We have needles everywhere. We have fentanyl still everywhere. All of these things. And considering that Mario is also the chair of the Humboldt County Democratic Committee, you can't ignore that we're in an anarchic situation right now. You can't ignore that this is an agenda. You can't ignore guys like David Cobb who are getting people together to talk about how we could dismantle capitalism and how we can create a utopian, a post-capitalist utopia in the city of Eureka. You can't ignore these things. They're in front of us. The ones that ignore it for reasons of, I don't know, but it's been the media. The media has ignored this.
Look what's happening. Nobody wants to be a police officer for the city of Eureka.
Who wants to work for a bunch of anarchists when you're a police officer who's being defunded?
You feel entirely unsupported.
Well, I think that's more at a state level. And in that regard, I think California's just sliding off a cliff in a lot of ways. I don't know how much of that is city dependent, although Eureka's pretty rough and tumble. Talk to me about David Cobb. How does he come into this for you guys?
So as we're, it's follow the affiliations and the partnerships and endorsements is what we've been doing in trying to figure out where people are with their politics and what they're actually disclosing and being transparent about. And we find David Cobb, and he is a self-proclaimed anarcho-communist. We have him on record, and he is also Leslie Castellano's partner in, for the past 4 years, they've done a symposium called Artists Dismantling Capitalism. And we start to recognize and learn more about him. And a lot of times when these people speak publicly, they think they're only speaking to their echo chamber. And obviously the media is on their side and won't disclose certain things, which we've found that. So we just did a deep dive on who he is, being the Green Party candidate back in the day, and recognizing that he is also an anarcho-communist, which we didn't know what that meant. And we start to do a investigation on what anarcho-communism is, and it's a anarchist school of thought that recognizes that all anarchist societies or zones in history have been so chaotic that eventually a strong man pops up, and a guy with the biggest gun. It's happened in Chaz. It's happened in Barcelona and Spain and different places. There's just been chaos when you consider anarchy, and the recognition that history does teach us lessons, and the sophistication of the idea of anarcho-communism comes from that fact, the fact that it takes anarchy to break down the system. And then communism is what they would like to replace this with. And in fact, what they'd like to replace our economy with, a solidarity economy. The solidarity economy was, in 1937, there was an anarchist named Felipe Elazar who wrote about the solidarity economy and its communal way of thinking, which is also a communist way of thinking. And we have David Cobb, who is the co-coordinator of the Global Solidarity Economy Network living here in Eureka. And when he moved here, before he really got people behind his movement, we have him on record in a Keat interview with
James Falk.
Mm-hmm. Basically talking about what he wants to do with his being a co-coordinator of Solidarity Economy, and how he recognizes our area as a potential experiment. He's trying to create, quote unquote, trying to create an experiment with Humboldt County, recognizing that we've had communes in the past, recognizing how liberal we've been in a sense, or socially, and also recognizing that there's an outlaw community here. So those things, he literally says that for the Solidarity Economy Network, Humboldt County is an experiment. It's a social experiment.
And he admits that he's not trying to get into office, but he wants to inspire others to do so. And in fact, Leslie Castellano, during one of the sessions of Artists Dismantling Capitalism, states to her group that Artists Dismantling Capitalism was what inspired her to run for council. And she told everybody there, and I look forward to supporting you in your campaigns.
Just understand too, like that is a conflict within itself. Like when you're in government, you're expected to be a representative of all the people, including the people who depend on capitalism, including the people who depend on, and don't get me wrong, like I know my history and the exploits of capitalism and the historical negative connotations that come with capitalism. But it also breeds innovation, competition, and it's what we got right now.
I mean, you hear David Cobb repeatedly saying how capitalism is fundamentally racist, classist, sexist, and I mean, is that capitalism or is that people? I mean, systematic oppression and whatnot existed long before capitalism.
So yeah, I think that there's that's the thing on Cobb, and we have some other things to discuss with him. But I'd like to play like a 2-minute clip. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know if that's gonna.
It's just gonna be.
It's
right
just
here.
audio.
Okay.
Audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Around, even as we fight the systems of how they actually operate, and use a galvanized working class, that we actually have to restructure the entire thing. And it's why in my role as the co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network, I am constantly pushing people to think about non-reformist reform. That is, what can we do right now that makes people's lives better and to reform, undermine the logic of capitalism, the logic of the dominant system, so that we can not only win that initial reform, but lead to true liberation and transformation. Those non-reformist reforms, worker-owned cooperatives. Number 2, community land trusts. Number 3, participatory budgeting. Number 4, public banking. Number 5, locally owned energy production and distribution models. And number 6, a universal basic income. You put all of those together, Dr. Fraud, and what you have is the beginning of truly democratizing the entire political economy. Here in Humboldt County, Wiyot Ancestral Territory, we have created a community land trust as a department of the Wiyot tribe that will be tasked with land back and land rematriation and restoration ecology and regenerative economic development and building of affordable housing. So what we're showing is that we can meet our concrete material needs, do political economy, make business and commerce work, but do it outside the dictates of capitalism. But we can't wait until we overthrow the entire national, federal, state apparatus to live that world. You have to live in the world that we're in now, but be clear that we really need to create an eco-socialist political economy, not only here in Humboldt County, not only in the United States, but ultimately global.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had David Cobb on the podcast, it's not shocking to me to hear that.
No. Yeah, we
He's a
saw
nice
that
guy.
one.
He's a nice guy. Whether you agree with his ideas or not is a different realm.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you like being, or would you ever like to be a part of a experiment when you don't even know you're being part of an experiment?
No.
Thank you.
But the idea of these utopias, it's so fascinating watching this play out because it's not, I mean, it's at a local scale, but it's also at a national scale where these ideas seem to have just washed over people. The problem is capitalism. And if we just get rid of capitalism, if we just implode the system, we can build something back that is so much better, so much more equitable, so much more diverse, and will be better for everyone.
That's your opinion?
No, that's the opinion that seems to be gripping people throughout the country. This idea of some utopia that we can build if we just blow up the current system.
I mean, I think we all agree that capitalism can be improved upon and done better.
Consider history and all of the types of systems that governments have put out there, whether it's socialism, whether it's communism, whether it's democracy. There are always going to be good and evil within those. So no matter what system we have, there's going to be a group of people that want to exploit for their own personal gain or the gain of their group of people that they feel is worthy of whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what, there's going to be exploits in whatever. And we have historically been part of a capitalistic system that has its own issues and its own exploits. But it's also has it without. It's interesting to hear him talk about all the negatives of it without recognizing the positives of it, and free thought and competition and the ability to have a way to move up in life. I mean, my grandparents were field workers. I mean, they crossed the Rio Grande 84 years ago. So I come from the working class. My grandparents worked their whole lives in the fields. My dad worked till he was 18 years old in the fields. I'm Hispanic, and I am blessed that they worked so hard to make sure that I could benefit from and move up in life and benefit from the fruits of their labor, and that's, to me, is where capitalism has led. It allows us to do this. There's no ceiling. There's not, you're a worker and you're not, or, there's movement within it, and there's free thought. There's competition, which breeds innovation. Like, these are the things that he doesn't want to talk about because he's speaking to his echo chamber and he's trying to convince them that we need to down the system and we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Dude, who the hell are you? Who do you think you are? Who died and made you the person that's going to create the chaotic situation so that your solidarity economy experiment can take hold in our community?
I mean, there are so many examples of historical implementation of communism that directly lead to oppression.
Well, that's the rub, right? How many people have died under communism?
Exactly.
It's a lot of people. But the idea is that, it was just never implemented right. And we could implement it correctly and it would be something incredible.
I mean, human nature is going to be human nature no matter what political ideologies you're having to live under. So, I mean, if that's the argument, then why can't we apply some better practices to capitalism?
Well, and here's the thing. People believe that if you can blow up the system, if you can demolish capitalism, you'll be able to just build something in its place.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when has that ever been an example where you implode the system and then peace erupts from that? The utopia has just taken place. It's not chaos. People aren't shooting each other in this. It doesn't devolve into pure aggression, human nature.
I mean, look at the Chaz and Chop situation. You remove law enforcement and what happens? Somebody takes that upon themselves to now be the new law.
But it's fascinating that these ideas have such a strong hold in people that despite any counter, we could do it right this time. We could take this and we could make something. All we have to do, we just have to get rid of capitalism.
You can't force the population into chaos. Like, the only way you're going to do that is deceptively. And that's what they're doing. They're being deceptive. They're speaking to their echo chamber and not expecting people to call them out on it. And we're listening now.
Well, and they're
We're paying
focusing
attention.
on like the really idealistic parts, like we should have healthcare for everybody. And, nobody should have food insecurities. Those are things that definitely need to be worked on and improved upon in our country. But when they're focused on that, like, people aren't realizing that it's leading to so much government reliance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the idea is that if you can just incrementally shift the line of where people are comfortable, you can implement some crazy ideas. If you don't do it all at once.
Mm-hmm.
You just slowly nudge people to the line and then you back off. And then you nudge them a little bit farther and then you back off.
I mean, David Cobb calls those non-reformist reforms, and he's got some pretty specific steps to.
I would take it a step further, even, is like what they're attempting to do is also indoctrinate, like also make our children feel like this is the way. through this land back and through proclamations that let people know this is Wiyot territory. And,
the land back thing kills me every time it's brought up. Every proponent of that, nobody's giving their land back. These people who have land and are like, we need to recognize where we are and what we did. They're not giving their land back. I always chuckle whenever you go, I was at a play and they opened it with, we want to recognize that we're on stolen land.
Yeah, they want the kids to hear that. And I feel that one of the slippery slopes of that philosophy is that a majority of tribes, not all of them, were warring with each other, and they were taking territory from each other. I mean, that was just the nature of mankind,
What are you talking about? They all lived in peace. They were a peaceful nation.
There was a lot of tribes that were taking each other's land, and the slippery slope to me is you're talking about giving land back to the tribe that happened to be the last one that had that particular territory. So it's a slippery slope. Where does it stop? It's not always historically accurate. There's not always people willing to give their land back, which is also part of the anarchist idea of no borders,
We're seeing how that's playing out right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you get into that weird realm of the World Economic Forum of you will own nothing and be happy. And for whatever reason, that is appealing to some people.
I think just people who don't want to earn what they have and want the handout to be given to them. And that also doesn't create innovation. It doesn't create competition. It doesn't do the things the positive things that go along with capitalism. And again, I say that knowing my history and knowing the exploits that have occurred with capitalism and knowing that there are the 1%, I know that that's there, but you know what? Like, you can't just group all of us business owners and all of us local shops and mom and pops with this big bad capitalist idea. And you can't just, you can't dismantle us or expect us to be okay with that.
So are you hoping that your campaign in some ways is a bulwark against that locally, that you can kind of, I don't know, stop the momentum somehow?
Not necessarily. I mean, the complexities of the seat and the different issues are going to require a lot of attention to those specific issues. And this is just one of them. This is just one that I feel needs some attention from the people, and an understanding of what's going on around us. Why are there so many needles and homeless and encampments? And why is there so much chaos and so many people pissed off and so many lies coming from people like Miles Slattery? And why are they gaslighting us? And when we have factual information for them, why are they not doing the different types of investigations that they should be? Why are our police departments being so abolished and defunded? A slow bleed, like you say. It's people have to understand that there's agendas that come from who knows where. But I could tell you the chair of the Humboldt County Democratic Committee is a now self-proclaimed anarchist. So, you got to put these things all together. So it's not my platform and why I'm running, but it certainly is going to be in the back of my mind. And I certainly will not shy away from the questions like other politicians have, who want to just act like that nothing's happening, like that 800-pound gorilla in the room that nobody wants to talk about. No, let's talk about this. This is our community, and these people. Mario moved here 5 years ago and started on
a school board.
Doesn't even have kids, but he started in the school board, and then he became a councilman. And where the hell did he come from? What is he doing?
Both of you seem very open about talking about these topics. Are you worried that that's going to hurt your campaign? bringing up the anarchism aspect, having that branding of, oh, we're going down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole. Is this, what are we doing here? Are you worried that that's going to negatively impact your campaign?
I've lived here almost my whole life. People know me. Jess has lived here almost her whole life. People know her. Like, people who know us know, and people who don't. And
yeah, but Miles knew you, and Miles turned on a dime.
Miles is also well paid, and he's told to shut up, and his bosses are right there telling him to shut up. Miles came into a seat after the city manager in 4 months got very mysteriously fired for whatever reason. They haven't disclosed why.
I don't know if he was fired or if
he was let go.
Okay.
I mean, they brought him from some other state, did all the vetting, and brought him here, gave him the job as the city manager, and 4 months later, he's out the door with some severance check and a non-disclosure. When Miles came into that seat, like, he realized that he's going to make triple figures, keep your mouth shut, and don't let the council be exposed.
Play ball.
Yeah, some people are willing to, and some people aren't. Some people, it's about money and it's about finances, and some people, it's about our community and our children and how they're going to.
And Miles has made it clear to us multiple times that those people are his bosses. So
power corrupts.
Money does too.
The challenge is you almost don't have the opportunity to see someone's true colors until they're in that position. And then by then it's too late.
That's true. I do believe in a higher power, and I do believe that someday people will have their karma. It's the way the world works.
What do you guys think your odds are right now, where you stand? Still a little ways out from the election. What's the sense on the ground?
I mean, the incumbent's always going to have the advantage.
Edge up.
Mm-hmm. And it's been a little bit of a tough road to get Roy's name out there. The media hasn't been entirely welcoming. Like, thank you to you for inviting us on.
Well, thank you guys for coming on and
thanks for
talking
us
in a long format. Like we were talking about the League of Women Voters. People can find that forum that you're involved in, but I think it's important to give you guys an aspect where you can take some time and have an avenue to actually discuss your ideas.
Yeah, really grateful.
Without a minute time limit to actually dive into it.
Yeah.
And Mike has, since he's been in the seat, 7 years now, endorsements that are going to help fund his campaign, so he's able to, afford to advertise in different ways and get himself out there in different ways. And
we did have groups and organizations and individuals that wanted to endorse us also, and we actually decided to respectfully deny them, mainly because we want people to recognize that we're in the middle. We're trying to get into a seat to govern from the middle, not from what our endorsers or people who give us money or a political party or party lines or an agenda. Like, we see that the necessity for the people to govern and us be the representative of the people.
And we've been getting out there and going door to door. Even Naya, Roy's 7-year-old, has done some door to door with him as well. And she's handing out handbills at school. It's pretty cute. And just trying to really engage with the community and letting them know that, Roy's on the floor and in the shop in Eureka a lot. I'm in Arcata, and we're here and available, and would love if people wanted to stop by and talk and ask questions, and really just want to gain consensus on different issues. And it's been really, really cool, actually, to get out there and talk to people in Blue Lake and see what they're going through. Their number one thing seems to be concern with their lack of law enforcement. And then you've got Arcata and the Gateway, and obviously affordable housing and things like that, and just trying to get an idea on what the people in our community want. Because if you can stand for them for that, then that's kind of the ultimate goal for a happy, thriving community.
I think trying to raise the bar too is like recognizing that we are, as a representative, we should feel blessed in the fact that we live in such a small community. Our district isn't hundreds of thousands of people. There's more ability for us to engage and build consensus on all the issues, including the ones that are right at your doorstep. Because people were stoked to see us. Like, what? Like, nobody comes to talk to us about, one instance was on Valley West and some of the things that some of the people are dealing with over there and the degradation of what's happening over there. And people were just stoked to see somebody at their doorstep who's concerned with what's happening when they leave their doorstep and right in front of their doorstep, and that is building consensus with the people and understanding what their views are on things. It's just a lot easier. We live in Humboldt County, and to know where the majority lies on any given issue should be considered a blessing to representatives, because they don't have hundreds of thousands of people to try to figure out how to represent them. Like, we want to represent the majority. The majority rules in a democracy, and it's difficult in Los Angeles to represent everybody. But I feel like that it's a lot easier, and if it takes going door to door, even after the campaign, like as a representative, calling up people, calling the supporters, going to certain areas of our district, Bayside, Valley West, Manila, Neeland, hosting these forums where people feel like, oh, it's just right down the road. Let's go talk about what we're dealing with, and let's see where the consensus is in the room. Let's figure out where the majority is. And it seems like it would be a weight off of a representative's shoulders to know that he's making decisions that are based on the majority, not off of your party or your party lines or your agenda or your friends or your donors or your endorsers. Like, we're going out to the people and we're figuring out what's going on with them in their community, in their micro community within our community,
Well, and a comfort to them to know that their potential elected official is so accessible. I think that the accessibility aspect in politics is so crucial and yet almost ignored in a lot of ways, where you can't reach out and touch who you elected, even though we are a small community.
Exactly.
Okay, well, thank you guys for coming on and chatting with me.
Of course.
I appreciate this.
Yeah, no worries.
Do you want to plug where people can find you, where they can find the campaign, all of your stuff, any of the documents that we've been reading? If they want to find those.
Sure. On my personal Facebook page, all of these documents, you could even type up, I believe that Las Cosas Outpost had a link to the claim that we filed against the city. It's all there, transparent for people to read.
Email is roygomezhumboldt@gmail.com.
Any questions, comments, concerns, we always want to hear them, whether, no matter what it is, to me, that's building consensus. That's learning what our community wants. And, like I said, we want to represent the people, not an agenda.
Okay, well, thank you guys. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.